This is why we get pissed off when we put our garbage can out on the curb and somebody next door neighbor throws their garbage in our garbage can, and we're like, that's not your garbage can, right? We're ridiculous.
They park their car on my side of the street.
Even though we're not using that spot,
Yeah.
right? Human beings are ridiculous creatures.
Yeah.
That's just human nature. The whole idea of finding a marginalized group, now you're getting into intent, right? You're getting into what we call the radicalization ladder. Okay. Because if you can find a marginalized group and validate that they've been marginalized, then you start them on a process of radicalization or a process of indoctrination that gets them to then assign a cause to their marginalization. That is a very different beast than your typical community organized group that says, hey, the problem is the justice system, like BLM. The problem is the justice system. They're not saying the problem is the US Constitution, right? They're saying the problem is the justice system. And here's the evidence that shows that the problem is the justice system.
Well, didn't they say it's systemic, which would then say it's based off the Constitution? It's systemic, right?
That's
so
a stretch.
The country was a 1619 project. The whole country was founded off of racism. So everything that the country produced, including the Constitution, is then thereby systemic, right?
It's still a stretch, right? Saying something is systematic or systemic.
Oh, I agree it's a stretch, but that's what they're saying. They're saying systemic. It's
that's
systemic.
What some group is saying, right? It's a wide playing field. Some groups are saying it's systemic and based in the Constitution. Other groups are saying it's just based in the modern legal system. So you have this continuum of explanations, just like we do for everything else.
Yeah.
The problem that you and I run into so often is that the voices that shout the loudest are the voices at the two ends of the spectrum, the two extremes.
Yeah, for sure. You said that we were a collectivist culture. So like humans are tribal, right? Right? Like we're tribal. Do you think that scales though? I mean, are we really, or was America more like based off of like individual values and freedom?
It's a great question. It's an important one to understand because we were founded on independence. Meaning, like if you really think back, the first American pilgrims, we were not fleeing religious persecution. That's not true. It's a popular statement in like elementary school, but that's not what the pilgrims were. The pilgrims were independent contractors. They were coming from a overpopulated Europe, and they were being promised land in exchange for cultivating the land to create produce that could go back to Europe. So everybody coming out here was coming back, essentially as an entrepreneur. That's what the pilgrims were. That's why they were willing to take that risk. It's not that they were being persecuted religiously. Some people were part of a religious group that the Europeans looked down on, but it's not like every pilgrim was being hunted to the end of their life. It was funded by the government, by the king at the time, right? So that's what we were founded on, is this idea of independence. Well, then over time, as we won our independence from the kingdom, and we became a society that had to fall under a common rule of law, we were forced out of our kind of tribal 13 colonies, and we became this unified country. If you recall, the whole reason we had a civil war was because people weren't sure if they wanted to be unified from coast to coast. So we've watched over the last 300 years, 280-ish years, as our country has gone from being fiercely independent to now becoming a collective society that adheres to a set of rules and guidelines that are dictated by an administration, a government, above us. And you've seen that happen in every element of your life. Like the days that your children go to school, the hours that they go to school is dictated by the government. The holidays that you have to give your employees.